Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority.
105.9 FM.
And AM 630.
WMAL.
7:37 on the Morning Majority. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham here. Talking to Scott Rasmussen, pollster extraordinaire. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Mary Catherine. How are you today?
Good. We were talking to our friend Jimmy Petticoukis of American Enterprise earlier, and he made the point, listen, maybe all these other stats go out the window, all these other polls go out the window when you look at the price of gas, because a lot of times the approval of the president tracks quite closely with it. Have you seen that in the past, and are you seeing it in your tracking poll?
The answer is maybe. It actually, what happens when the price of gas goes up is consumer confidence falls almost immediately when there's a spike in the gas prices. That translates, not quite directly, but translates pretty closely into the president's job approval ratings. And it could have a big impact on stalling the overall economic recovery.
I have questions, many questions, Scott, about the state of the GOP race. I study these polls. I look at them all. I look at the Rasmussen polls, and of course I know that because they come from you, they're very good. But I look at other polls as well, and I see confusion out there. I see Michigan. It could go either way, Santorum or Romney. I see Arizona, Romney leading only by 3. I see a poll in Oklahoma that says Santorum was up by 16. Up by 27, according to a poll in Texas. In Georgia, one could expect that Newt Gingrich would do quite well and maybe do well in other southern states. I see confusion. What's going on out there, Scott?
Well, some people get their dream prom date early, and others are kind of desperate near the end, trying to find somebody to go with. And the Republican primary right now has shown that none of the candidates have really won over the Republican voters. Partly it's because Mitt Romney is still seen as the most electable candidate, the strongest potential general election opponent, and yet there is a nagging feeling that, he's given us lots of reasons, like he's got the most money and the best organization, and he's able to say bad things about the other guys, but we really want some love. We want some romance here, and he's not getting it to us.
All right, let me stop you there for a moment, because you say that in the polling data seem to show that Romney is seen by many as the most electable GOP candidate. That drives a lot of people crazy. We hear an incredible reaction when we say that, but you say there's data to back that up. And then the data also seem to show that maybe Santorum, while he makes the heart flutter for many conservatives, can't win the moderate voters. Am I correct in saying that the data also shows that?
That last part, not quite as strong. What the data shows is if Rick Santorum could convince Republicans, and I hate to use the word again, that he was electable, that he could beat Barack Obama, he would be winning this competition big time right now. We do know that Republicans are really frustrated with the notion that they have to settle for somebody. We also know that the most important thing to most Republicans is beating Barack Obama. And if you go back through the race, when Newt Gingrich surged, it's because his debate performance has convinced a lot of people that maybe he could beat Obama. Right now, perceptions of Santorum's ability to beat Obama are improving. So there is that mix of attitudes that people are looking for. And they want the perfect candidate. They want somebody who can beat Obama, and they want somebody who will bring about change if they're fortunate enough to move in the White House.
Did you get into reasons why they think Santorum is not as electable as Romney? Is it the social issues, or is it something else?
Partly it's because Mitt Romney has been talked about as electable for so long. Partly it's social issues. And for a long time it was the fact that in every poll we saw that Mitt Romney fared better against President Obama than any other candidate.
That's not so much true anymore, is it?
It's not at all. In fact, in our polling, we tracked those two numbers, those two candidates against Barack Obama every day. And for the last week, they were dead even in terms of their race against the president. Both of them trailed President Obama by just 5 points.
Scott, I want to ask you about this poll that shows 53% of Americans favor repeal of the health care law, and that's encouraging to me as not a fan of the health care law. But here's the interesting part to me. 50% think it's likely that it'll be repealed. I don't know if they haven't spent a lot of time in Washington, but I like the idea that people have this idea. Are you surprised by it?
Well, I would be, except for we've been polling on this almost from the moment the bill became law. The first week after the health care bill was passed, 54% wanted to see it repealed. That number has barely budged in the last couple of years. The number who say it's at least somewhat likely to be repealed has grown significantly. And, you've got to remember that could include a judicial repeal in effect or a political repeal. But the reality is, if President Obama is reelected, that law will not be repealed unless it's by the Supreme Court.
All right. What about Michigan? What is Michigan? What kind of state is that? Is it a blue state or is it a purple state? And what about the Republicans that will actually go to the polls on Michigan? What is their makeup like?
Well, Michigan is certainly a blue state at this point in time. If it becomes competitive this time around, it is very bad news for the Obama campaign. What we're seeing in Michigan is an electorate that is clearly struggling even more than most of the nation financially. They are frustrated. But what's also interesting is in earlier times, frustrated Michigan voters would have turned to the Democratic Party in troubled economic times. They are turning more to Republicans, or at least they did in 2010. And partly that's because there's a heavy share of white working class Democrats or white working independents who used to be Democrats, people we once called Reagan Democrats in the state. That's a problem for Mitt Romney. He doesn't do as well among those voters as Rick Santorum does.
Are you in the camp that if Romney doesn't win Michigan, he's in a whole lot of trouble?
Absolutely. I've got a column out, my weekly syndicated column, that says that if he wins Michigan and Arizona, if Romney wins those two, the race is effectively over.
Really?
But if he loses, not only is Santorum, way more than a flavor of the month, the Romney campaign is in serious trouble.
All right. So one other thing, we heard some statistics the other day. Some people are saying that the Senate might not go to Republicans, which was the conventional wisdom not long ago. Do you have any facts on that?
I think if I had to bet today, I would bet barely that it would go to the Republicans, but I wouldn't bet much. And the reason is Republicans right now have 47 seats. I think Nebraska and North Dakota are very likely to go GOP. Scott Brown is going to have a hard time holding on to the seat in Massachusetts. That gets you to 48 or 49 seats for the Republicans. There are several toss-up states ranging from Florida to Wisconsin and Virginia and a few others, but they're likely to go in the way that the wave or the trend is heading between now and November, and they're likely to go strongly for one party or the other. If things get better for President Obama, if things are perceived to be in better shape across the nation, Republicans will have a hard time picking up their last couple of seats.
Wow.
Scott Rasmussen, Pollster, Rasmussen Reports, and the author of the new book, The People's Money. Thanks for coming on. We always appreciate it.